views expressed in this video are solely those of the host and the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization or entity that may be affiliated with. We encourage the viewer to conduct their own research. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of The Pack Breakers, a show dedicated to tobacco harm reduction and the people of tobacco harm reduction. So before I continue with this interview, I just want to, just a brief warning. I'm recording from Johannesburg and we've just experienced a very severe thunderstorm. And I don't think it's quite clear yet if I look out the window here. So if you hear a big bang, I do apologize. That might be some lightning or something falling on the roof. So today's interview is a very special one for me. It's an individual that I've been following for pretty much my entire vaping life. He's been instrumental in keeping me off cigarettes, been inspirational in me keeping my interest not only in the topic of THR and vaping, but the hardware and all the other ins and outs that are happening around. But recently, I think I've appreciated this gentleman far more based on his advocacy around tobacco harm reduction. He is a content creator. He's been on YouTube for many years. I'm not going to give the statistics. Hopefully we can clear that up in the conversation. But without any further ado, I'd like to welcome everybody, or welcome Nick Green to the Pack Breakers. Hi there,
Hey,
Nick.
hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Kurt. I appreciate it.
No,
I
thank
love the
you.
name of this podcast, by the way, Pack Breakers. It's so good because it works on so many different levels. I wanted to let you know, this is a great name for a podcast.
Thank you so much. It took
Absolutely.
us all but 15 minutes to figure it out. We're that
It's good.
brilliant.
Good.
Nick, I'm going to call you Nick. I know you're known as GrimmGreen on YouTube world.
Sure.
Before we start, just recently you had a video on, I think it was on X, where you're answering a question about why do you keep doing these YouTube videos on vaping? And it was groups of individuals that you snippet saying that they're, GrimGreen helped me quit smoking. And although I can't say that you helped me quit smoking because I had already started vaping, but what I can say without a doubt is that you kept me very interested and inspired around the vaping world. I can't tell you how many products that I have around me purely based on your recommendation and the videos that you've provided. In fact, my very last one is this little guy here.
Oh, nice. Nicely done.
I still have the original recoil with the Cobra fangs. Still one of my favorite RDAs. It's kept in its little spot on the other side of the room. Yeah. So thank
Safety
you very
deposit
much.
box. Yeah.
Yes. No. Absolutely. I think it's like hen's teeth. Can you remember the recoil? So yes, I can. I still have it.
Nice.
So Nick, I mean, not only are you in the part of the world that is safe to say the birthplace of a lot of the misinformation around vaping, but you're also in a state that is incredibly aggressive towards tobacco harm reduction.
Incredibly
How
aggressive.
do you do that, sir?
You just have to believe in the mission. That's I think the most critical important thing is you have to believe in them. I'm a big believer in the mission just because I've seen what these products do and still continue to do in terms of, very ingrained smokers who have been smoking cigarettes for 20, 30, 40 years. These are people who more or less gave up on quitting. Just smoking has just become a part of their life. When you're smoking at 60 years old, and then you get a pod system or a vape, or you build, you get a little sub tank, and then suddenly you go a day without cigarettes. And then maybe people have some cigarettes, but then they go a couple more days without cigarettes. And then before they know it, it's been 6 months and they haven't had a cigarette. And I've seen this firsthand just change people's lives. And I think sticking to the mission of trying to switch as many smokers as possible is the most important thing. And that's what, that's everything. That's what gives me energy. That's what gives me fuel to keep doing what I'm doing. And it gets, as I'm sure you can attest to, it gets difficult when so many people around you, including people who should know better, including people in power, including lawmakers, saying the wrong things, conflating the wrong things, muddying the waters, muddying the messaging, and people who smoke cigarettes don't know what information to believe or what information to not believe. And I want to be I want to be a place where people can get good, accurate, honest information about vaping. And I'm very biased. I'm biased towards vaping. So if you come to me, I'm just going to sing you the praises of vaping because I'm biased in that way. But that's something I can't not I can't not do it. I've seen it change too many lives. I can't not give up. I can't stop. I can't slow down, even in the face of people telling me that it's, you know, that there's a youth epidemic or that there's, X, Y, and Z and popcorn lung and all these weird half truths that get put out by organizations that people generally trust. And that's one of the, I think that's one of the more difficult things. It's hard not to sound it's hard not to sound crazy when you say, well, the World Health Organization is really wrong about vaping and tobacco harm reduction.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's quite surreal. I mean, I'm married to a pediatrician, a doctor, so it took me some time to convince her.
Sure.
And
Was that difficult?
yes,
Yes. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
you know, of the entire spectrum of medical professionals, the most risk adverse of all of them happens to be a pediatrician. But
Yeah,
I
for
think,
sure.
my story is obviously, I have said it many times, I smoked for many years, 20 years, I was
Mhm.
smoking 40 cigarettes a day. And it was the death of my father before the day before our wedding day, that our planned
Oh,
wedding day,
no.
that finally became the catalyst of me trying to quit smoking, which was a 10-year journey. And only after 10 years that I managed to find vaping products. And it was just by chance meeting in a parking lot with a guy selling vapes out of the boot of his car. I mean, we
Sure.
didn't. The only other things we had were those cigarettes, and then there was a Generation Two company called Twisp in South Africa. I had tried them; they didn't really work. But it was when I got my first modular device that suddenly the thing changed within 3 days. How did you
Mhm.
find out about this remarkable product?
It was honestly just pure chance. I was smoking cigarettes, and my brother and I used to make like twice a year trips down to Las Vegas. We lived up in Northern California. So it was about a day's drive. It was about an 8 hour drive, but we'd get in the car, have a road trip, go down to Las Vegas, stay there for the weekend. There was always gambling, there was always cocktails, there was always lounges. And when you're in that environment, you just smoke. You just smoke because you can smoke kind of anywhere, and you end up feeling like Dean Martin or something, sitting at a blackjack table with your cocktail and your cigarette, and you're just, it's a vibe. It's a vibe. But I always hated smoking so many cigarettes because I couldn't control myself. It was like 2 packs of cigarettes a night in Las Vegas. And I was just not really looking forward to that as much as I kind of was looking forward to that. I knew that I really wasn't looking forward to that. And so I got on the internet and I Googled fake cigarettes because I figured there had to be something. And I was honestly thinking of like, you know, just a tube or something or something to replace that, just a
One of those
placebo, something.
candies, one of those candies.
Sure, yeah, like one of those little candy cigarettes, just something to replace that, something I could hold in my hand, something I could hold in my mouth, something that maybe gave me the feel of cigarettes but wasn't cigarettes. And the first thing that popped up was this guy named Leaford on YouTube, and he was reviewing this product called the Smoke 51 electronic cigarette, and it just blew my mind, completely blew my mind, and I didn't understand what I was seeing. I thought, well, that's not a cigarette, and the end lights up with a little LED, and he's exhaling something visible. I want that. That's what I want. I want that. And so I ended up buying it, and it was really expensive back then. This is, 2009. So everything was wicked overpriced. I went on eBay and it was like 200 plus dollars for just this little starter kit with 2 batteries, 2 little cartomizers. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know about nicotine levels. I didn't know about, liquids or how to work this, or I don't know. I just bought it, and it worked okay. And I immediately burned through 2 cartomizers, and I ended up going to Vegas and smoking like a lunatic, like Dean Martin again. And then I got home and I was more determined to like dig into this and figure out what these products were. And I found a bunch more websites, and I started reading about liquid and atomizers and batteries. And, I found the ECF forum, which way back then, the ECF forum was like a few hundred people, and it was just a random groupings of people from all over the country who had kind of found these products and gathered together on this one place on the internet. And that's where we talked about them. And that's where people would help each other out and troubleshoot things. I would pop in there and say, this atomizer burnt out. This is happening with this, and I don't know why. And people kind of, it was all very communal and very, people just were trying to help each other not smoke cigarettes. And that, like, that atmosphere, that vibe of offering up help no matter what, even if it's the dumbest question on earth, I kind of feel obligated to answer those really dumb questions, because they're not dumb, because someone's trying to quit smoking cigarettes, you know?
Yeah,
And so the alternative is, you're either going to help this person have a better vape, or they're going to go smoke
yeah.
cigarettes. And I'd rather them not smoke cigarettes. So let's answer the dumb questions. And people answered my dumb questions. So, nowadays I try to answer as many, air quotes, dumb questions as I possibly can, because, like I said, that's sometimes the difference. That's sometimes the difference between someone not smoking cigarettes and someone just going and buying another pack because they're frustrated with their atomizer.
It's
And
exactly the same.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly the same. Yeah, we have an e-cigs essay, which is a forum where
Mm-hmm.
many people go in and offer advice or ask questions. And that's where we
Mm-hmm.
did all our learning, because we didn't have vape shops or anything
Yeah.
like that. We just had literally people that were stumbling their way around, all on the same mission, and that is to
Yeah.
quit smoking. And it, for a lot of us, it just turned into a hobby.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
dabbled with making juices, doing my own coils. I used to watch Turk, I don't know, countless times trying to figure out how to make an
Mm-hmm.
alien coil. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it is very interesting how in different parts of the world, when I speak to individuals, how they all had it's the same patterns, the same trajectories,
Yeah.
the same fringe that just kept exploring, pushing the boundaries, trying different things, and then
Mm-hmm.
sharing advice. I think that was probably the most
Yeah. It
important,
was
is how many
huge.
of them
And
shared it.
and I've talked to so many people who, the the hobby side of it is one of the big motivating factors in continuing to use it, as far as, learning about resistance and building your own coils and mixing your own juice, and kind of this hobby aspect of it, and this fiddly, what I like to call the fiddly aspect of it. It's for, certain people just really get into that, and it becomes part of what helps vaping work, up to and including people, like you mentioned, M Turk. Um, M Turk, through vaping, also just didn't quit smoking. He became a clean and sober person because of coil building. He stopped using drugs, started building coils to keep his hands busy, and vaping got him off of cigarettes, and vaping also got him clean. And it's just, that's a huge deal. That's
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 massive.
what makes that's massive.
That's massive.
That's massive just from essentially a consumer created technology. It's like, sure, China and Han Lick, they invented these products, but it was the early adopters that innovated all this stuff forward with bigger batteries and rebuildable atomizers. And it was consumers trying to save their own lives that really pushed this technology forward. And that's one of the most impressive things about vaping to me.
It is. And it's all in the name of just trying to stay off cigarettes
Yeah.
and trying to help
Yeah.
other people off cigarettes.
Hmm.
So, I mean, when did you decide to, no, okay, let's make this a thing. Let's make this a channel. What drove you to that?
It was, again, lots of just circumstances and lots of just decisions in the moment. I got my vape and I was interacting on the ECF forum, and it was great. And all those people were helpful, but there wasn't a lot of people on YouTube doing any other reviews, or, one thing that I was looking for that didn't exist back then was just reviews of e-liquids, because I didn't know what was out there. And I don't know if this Dr. Pepper flavor that I'm ordering from China is any good. Turns out it's not. But there was nobody on the internet mentioning, like, these liquids are good, these liquids are bad. Here's what I like, here's what I dislike. Here's how you use this atomizer. I'm a very visual learning person, and so I thought, well, I need to do that. I need to get on the internet and literally tell as many people as I can, like, tell as many smokers as I can, hey, you can save your own life. We have this technology now. I'll try to show you how to use it, but you can quit smoking. It felt like, I don't know, it felt like the noble thing to do is, like, tell as many people as I can about this, provide as much information as I possibly can about this. And I just thought that the best way to do that was to start a YouTube account. And I just did, and I did my, and I considered it a hobby for many, many, many years. I didn't want to, you know, I guess it was a little bit foolish, but I didn't really want it to, like, take over my whole life. I had a really great job at Starbucks. I was in a band, and I was, I had things going on, and then
Mm.
vaping kind of started taking over all of my time. All of my thoughts was about vaping, and it started taking over, and this YouTube started growing a little bit more than I was, like, comfortable with, and it came to a point where I felt like I had to do one or the other. It's like, well, I have to either go do this vaping thing all the time, full time, and really go for it, or I'm just going to have to keep this as a hobby and keep my great job with people that I love. And I had a great job that I loved with great benefit, great benefits. So I decided, I guess we're just going to do this full time. I don't think I really had a choice in retrospect. I was like, you're going to do this. You're going to go be a vape guy because you started this YouTube, you started this hobby.
And thank you for that. I mean, I think I it would be amazed. I would be amazed to see how many people actually, like me, followed you and kept inspired, and even those that had just watched your videos and decided, okay, tomorrow morning I'm gonna go pick up a vape,
Yeah.
and change their life. I mean,
Yeah.
it, it's just incredible. And but it hasn't been smooth sailing, Nick. I mean, just recently you
No.
had a
No.
situation with YouTube with demonetizing. I'm not quite sure if it's now being
Yeah.
concluded or if there's if
It's more or less. I think it's more or less a done deal. I got YouTube isn't. They suddenly became very, very aggressive towards vaping um, during the first adpocalypse. I don't know if anybody remembers this from YouTube, but there was a time in 2016, 2017 where ads, like Coca-Cola ads, were running on a video that was like someone getting blackout drunk and crashing their car or something, something, not great. And so these advertisers went, YouTube, what are you doing about this? We don't want our ads running on videos like this. And so YouTube went through what we all call the adpocalypse, where they really cranked down on community guidelines. They really cranked down on the rules. They really decided who gets to be monetized and who doesn't. And my monetization was essentially cut in half at that point. At one point, I was making all of my income from YouTube and ad revenue. And then within the span of about a week, that got about cut in half because, nicotine and vaping, and it's just seen as like this fringe thing. It's associated with drugs or addiction or tobacco and things like that. So YouTube already kind of had their thumb over me being like partially demonetized. There was a lot of video suppression going on, and it was just the adpocalypse. We somehow survived that. They started giving out lots of strikes, not just to me, but to other YouTubers, other vape YouTubers, getting strikes for community guidelines. And they would constantly change the rules about, well, you can't have links in your description or you're going to get a strike. We said, okay, edit all the descriptions, remove all the links. And then you get another strike. And it's like, well, what was that strike for? It's like, well, you showed a web address on the screen. So you go, okay, let's go edit all my videos, remove all the web addresses from the screen. Some more time passes. YouTube gives you another strike. You're like, well, what was that strike for? They're like, well, you can't even say a web address verbally or we're going to give you a strike. It's like, okay, we'll go back. I'll delete a bunch of videos. We'll edit videos. We'll try to remain compliant. Some time passes. You get another strike. And they say, well, you can't even say the name of the company or give the impression that you're facilitating a transaction. So you can't encourage someone to buy a product. Like you can't verbally encourage somebody to buy a product by saying, I really like this, you know? So it became this, we're never able to please YouTube because they're constantly changing the goalposts. And I'm trying to remain compliant, but it's just not possible. Now they're just fully demonetizing vape channels completely. We don't have access to AdSense. We don't have access to memberships. We can't do super chats on streams. We are nothing. We get zero now. And it really hit everybody, but it feels inevitable to me. And many people have already been hit with demonetization. And that just, that's the thing. That's like a flavor ban passing. That just you feel defeated. You're like, well, hell. Like what?
Yeah, and it's not just, jumping through these hoops, but you have to go back in your history and then
Yeah.
fix and edit all of those things so that all that
Edit.
time. So, I mean, it's just ludicrous. Can you imagine,
It is.
saying to somebody that writes short stories to say, listen, all the books that you've released or all those stories you've released, we need you to take out the following words because they might.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're
Mm-hmm.
just going to take you completely off
Mm-hmm.
the library shelves. So now
Yeah.
you physically have to go out and change all of these things or make sure that content is meeting a certain standard.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's perplexing for me. I mean, the First Amendment always comes to mind, and I don't know
Sure.
how that fits into this whole equation. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And it's
Yeah, the First Amendment doesn't fit so much into YouTube because, in America, the First Amendment really covers your freedom of speech against uh, official or governmental censorship. So I can get on a podcast like this and say, uh, Trump is garbage, Biden is garbage, Kamala Harris is garbage, this Secretary of State's garbage, terrible people, I hate them. The government can't punish me
okay.
for those words. But if YouTube has a rule saying you can't say that Trump's garbage, you can't say that Biden's garbage, and then I go on YouTube and say that Trump's garbage and Biden's garbage, then I can get in trouble because of their rules.
Okay.
So the freedom of speech thing doesn't, I mean, it sucks, but it doesn't necessarily apply to me on YouTube. It more applies to
Because of their terms and conditions.
right, because of their terms and conditions and their rules and their private company, but it more applies to you could call up the First Amendment for like vendors and shop owners because vendors and shop owners have a gag order in the US where they can't say that these are less harmful than smoking cigarettes. Even though the government can say that, they don't want private organizations saying that. And to me that messes with the First Amendment. That messes with freedom of speech. If I'm a vendor of these and the government can say they're less harmful but I can't, or the government will punish me, that to me is a First Amendment issue.
That is an issue. That
You
is an
know,
issue.
that's an issue.
So, I mean, just
Yeah.
for interest sake, I mean, how many videos have you uploaded to YouTube over the years?
I don't know off the top of my head. I could do some quick research, but the number's always kind of shifting, I guess, because I'm constantly uploading still, to YouTube despite being demonetized. I actually couldn't even tell you how many. I think it's over 1,500 at the moment.
That's
Something like
insane.
1,500 videos and live streams.
And you got over
Yeah.
400,000 subscribers.
Yeah, 400, and yeah, that's a whole other, reach. Your reach is tied directly to your, your monetization for lack,
So that's 400,000 pairs of eyeballs that are watching your content on their platform,
yes.
and they don't think that's of any value to them.
Yeah, of any
the
value
crazy
to
thing.
them. Or I mean, yeah, or even just the idea that people who could watch my video and quit smoking cigarettes isn't of any value either.
So shall we coin a new term, VDS, vape derangement syndrome?
Vape derangement syndrome. It is. I mean, it's a very real thing. People are, again, because of misinformation and disinformation, because of people who know better saying things that they know they shouldn't, everybody's confused.
Mhm.
And YouTube, they follow the World Health Organization's recommendations on everything. So if the World Health Organization says that vaping is dangerous and it only appeals to kids, then YouTube goes, okay, vaping is dangerous and only appeals to kids. So channels that promote it can't be monetized, can't be pushed, can't ever, for lack of a better term, go viral. And that's one of the unfortunate parts of being demonetized is, if I'm not making any money off of my video, YouTube isn't making any money off of my video. So why does YouTube have the incentive to put my video in front of anybody?
Yeah.
They don't really now. And so that really sucks. So I'm relying much more, as far as reach goes, I'm relying much more on just views, people watching the video and sharing it organically rather than trying to rely on YouTube to promote my video, which they're not going to do because they're not making any money because I'm not making any money because I got demonetized. It's just this cycle of it's awful.
It is.
Straight up awful.
And I think you're touching on on a very important topic that we currently facing, and that is the youth. And
Ugh.
it's it is something that we have to acknowledge, especially in my household, that it is a very serious concern. However, what we're seeing, for example, in the United States with the CDC's National Youth Tobacco Survey, is that
Mhm.
that whole gateway theory just never materialized. We've seen
Never.
record lows in smoking in that cohort, and we've seen a significant decline in 30-day use and even daily use in the United States.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and one of the things that really perplexes me is that there's no, as I think Charles Gardner said, there's no ticket tape parade or national holiday that we finally achieved a smoke-free generation in
Right.
a very short space of time. And it's like, no, we're not done yet. We want
No.
negative kids vaping and
Yeah.
smoking.
Well,
Negative.
yeah. That drives me absolutely insane. We have reached basically the end game of youth cigarette smoking. They're done smoking cigarettes, and nobody's celebrating it. And everybody's, they want this fantasy world of a nicotine-free society now. While 8 million people globally are still dying from cigarette smoking.
Yeah. Or
It's
in
like, well,
America,
that
is half a million adults that are.
half a million adults every year over year since we started doing this. Half a
Collateral
million
damage.
year over year. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bonkers to me. Yeah, and the youth argument, and there's so much data on youth vaping and youth smoking, and there's the uh, University of Massachusetts Amherst recently did a big study. They did a path study, so they used all of FDA and CDC data, and their big conclusion was there's no evidence of a gateway.
Yeah.
There's evidence of an off ramp, but there's zero evidence that youth vaping causes youth cigarette smoking. It just doesn't exist. The gateway isn't there.
And we
But
never
that
ever
doesn't
saw that in
stop.
the mainstream media.
No,
No.
you're not going to see it from American Cancer Society. They're not going to promote that science. The World Health Organization isn't going to acknowledge that science. The American Lung Association, the American Heart Association, all of these NGOs that still talk about EVALI as a reason not to smoke, as a reason not to vape. They still talk about, well, it's a danger to youth. It changes their brain. It primes them for addiction. It makes them more likely to smoke cigarettes. And you look at all of those statements and you go, these are all demonstrably false statements. So,
Absolutely.
who's wrong? Who's wrong? Someone's wrong.
Yeah.
Someone's wrong.
And no one's cared to admit that they're wrong.
And
So,
no one cares to admit
and
that they're wrong. That's the biggest problem.
and one of the most ludicrous things that I saw recently is the American Lung Association commenting on nicotine pouches, and your
Oh my
comment on
Lord.
that was so funny.
Yeah.
How is
It,
this in any way part of your concern? Is it
yeah. How is it their business?
exactly? It's a nicotine pouch that has no impact on the lungs whatsoever, and they went full hog on a disinformation campaign around nicotine pouches.
Full hog.
Yeah, more VDS,
Completely.
more
And
VDS.
really, I mean, if American Lung Association was being true to their cause and true to their mission of wanting to eradicate lung cancer and help people have healthy lungs, they would truly they should be promoting nicotine pouches. They should be painting them in the best light possible. They shouldn't be encouraging everyone who smokes cigarettes to replace their combustion with a pouch. That would drop lung cancer rates. Period. I mean, it just would, because harm reduction works.
We got a perfect example in Sweden.
Perfect example in Sweden. Everybody denies Sweden, but
Yeah,
Sweden continues to exist and continues to be a smoke-free country.
yeah,
Same with New Zealand. New
yeah.
Zealand is about to achieve that status as well through the same exact measures. Yeah,
So,
it
Nick,
doesn't make any sense.
where do you think this is going? Because I noticed that, and you've quite clearly have pointed this out a number of times on X, is that Trump made a call, or at least a statement, to say that he is going to save vaping once again.
Yeah.
And
He did such a good job saving it the first time that
yeah,
it needs to be saved again,
yes,
and he's the one to do it.
and we're not hearing that promise that being full. Do you think it's going to happen?
No, I don't think it's. I think if it happens, it's going to be purely coincidental and unintentional. If it happens,
Do you have any faith in the new HHS secretary in dealing with stuff like this?
I don't have much faith. No, I don't have much faith in any of the new leadership. We just got a new head of the FDA recently within the last few days, and he hasn't really made any comments throughout his career that would lead me to believe he's going to be more sympathetic to tobacco harm reduction or vaping, or have any desire to to reform the Center for Tobacco Products within the FDA. All he's ever talked about is the dangers of Chinese disposables. We need to get them off the street. We need more enforcement. He hasn't mentioned anything about we need better regulations or anything that would actually solve the problem. They like to talk about enforcement. And Brian King, the current director of the CTP, he also recently said, well, we need more money for enforcement. We need to enforce on these Chinese disposables. And that kind of blows my mind. And RFK, listen, RFK is not he's not a doctor, he's not a scientist. He's just a guy. I know that RFK is not fond of big tobacco, and that is a little bit of like, okay, well, like that's a start. If you're not fond of big tobacco, you know, I can sit and explain to RFK that I've watched visually with my own eyes over the last few years. I've watched the FDA clear the market and then hand it entirely to big tobacco. That's just a thing that happened, and we watched it happen. So maybe he would see that. Maybe he would, big tobacco's getting a free pass here. Something could come of that. We need competition in the marketplace. Maybe something could come of that. But I'm not instilled with a great sense of hope, as it were, for Trump to either fulfill his promises, for RFK to be a man of science, for the new head of FDA to be a man of science. I don't have a whole lot of hope, but that's not going to keep me from making my voice heard and playing the game and trying to convince people and trying to sway, speak truth to power, as it were.
But
Still going to keep going.
But it has been very interesting to watch is that even with the science, even with those enormous hoops that had to be jumped in order to fulfill PMTA criteria, um, and they have approved 34 vaping products,
Yes.
and but all of them happen to be products created or at least owned by
Yeah.
big tobacco. It's
Coincidentally,
it's
completely coincidentally,
but
they all happen to be owned by big tobacco. Yeah.
But it's not only in the United States. We see this kind of move. I'm seeing this kind of moves in any part of the world where, it's this almost secret handshake that has happened between governments and big tobacco. I mean,
Yes.
it's the role of governments or the way I'm seeing it now, the role of governments is to get bigger and more lethargic, and with that, less administrating,
Mm-hmm.
hurdles to cross. So if they can have
Mm-hmm.
fewer people to regulate and to control, it
Mm-hmm.
makes their life a little bit easier. And then on top of it, throw some kind of excise to just create another revenue stream. And we
Yep.
saw that in South Africa with the excise, the tax that's placed on e-liquids, is that when we try to advise them that it
Awful.
should be based on nicotine strength, if anything, they said, well, we don't actually have the facilities to test the nicotine, so we're just going to throw everything that looks or resembles an e-liquid into the tax and base
Yep.
it per mil. And if you fail to do that, then we're just going to ship this problem over to law enforcement, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
There's no
Yep.
consequential thought. I mean, South Africa is a very, very big illicit tobacco market. Over 60% of cigarettes consumed in South Africa is an illicit cigarette.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
I mean, yeah,
it's,
that's in a lot of places. It's
yeah,
like high majority of cigarettes even are illicit cigarettes because of taxes.
yeah,
Australia, like you said, South Africa,
yeah, it's
it
crazy.
just creates an illicit market.
So this is turning out to be quite an upbeat show. Um,
Yeah, hey, that's fine.
uh, any good dad jokes? Um,
Yeah. Well, it should, and as bad as it is, as depressing as it is, there's still, maybe I just have too much optimism, but vaping works. It just does. You can't, the cat's out of the bag. Someone who smokes cigarettes, if they pick up a disposable or if they pick up a pod, it's it's most likely going to work. And then that person is immediately, hopefully, going to be radicalized and go, I was told this doesn't work. I was told this. I was told that. Turns out none of that's true.
Well, it happened to me last week. Is that in fact one of one of the people that we interviewed a couple of weeks ago. He sent me a WhatsApp that was forwarded to him, or at least sent to him. He forwarded me the WhatsApp, and it was a lady that had been smoking for decades, from a very young age, and you know she's my age now, and she has been diagnosed, or she was diagnosed 6 years ago with COPD.
Oh,
And
oof.
literally a year, I mean, at 50 years old, and she's diagnosed with severe COPD. And literally, I think it was a year ago that she picked up a disposable vape from this gentleman.
Hmm.
And she is absolutely over the moon because her COPD is now stabilized, and she's finally off the cigarettes, and she is absolutely ecstatic that she's, first of all, that she's been able to
Yeah.
quit smoking, and second of
Yeah.
all, that her COPD is now stabilized, and she is looking forward to continuing with her life, although, I
Yeah.
mean, she has COPD now. But I mean, it's those stories that literally puts that pep in my step again, puts that wind
Yeah.
in the sail to say, you know what, this is why. This is exactly why. Because, you know, if I look at my situation, my son never met my father, and he doesn't know my mother. He never knew my mother, really. He was
Mm,
too young when she passed away.
yeah.
He never knew my uncles and aunts that had all passed away from smoking related diseases.
Yeah.
And why is this such a difficult thing to understand? Is that
Yeah.
we have so many people that literally cannot quit smoking, and the irony of all of it is that well over 70% of these individuals all started smoking when they were teenagers.
Yep. Yep.
So they did stupid
Yep.
things, made stupid mistakes, like myself, fell into the trap, but we couldn't get out. And there was no
Yeah.
real assistance. I don't know about it in the States, but in South Africa, there is no assistance for people to help them get out. It's quit or
No.
die. Or,
It's quit or die, and it's mostly shame.
yes, or
Stigma
tax,
seems to be the go-to.
stigma,
Yeah.
tax, shame.
Yeah.
And if you are of a certain income group, then you can afford things like cessation support, psychotherapies, pharmaceuticals, and NRTs. But that's a very
Hmm.
small percentage of South Africans that can fall into that bracket of people that could pay for that support. The rest of
Yeah.
them, it's cheaper to buy an illicit
Yep.
cigarette than it is to quit.
And that shouldn't be that way.
No.
It shouldn't be. It kills me. That kills me in the same way that in the U.S. Uh, for decades, and this is how my grandfather on my dad's dad passed away from cancer because he enlisted. He went and fought in World War II. In his rations were packs of cigarettes because they know nicotine calms people down. And so they give soldiers cigarettes. And he came back smoking cigarettes, just continuing. Government g- hooked him on cigarettes so that he could go fight a war. And then he came back and just continued smoking cigarettes, continued smoking his pipe. It eventually killed him. He died way too young. And there was nothing for him. There was nothing for him. And then we fast forward to 2025, and the VA still tells veterans that you shouldn't quit smoking with a vape. The VA is telling veterans, people who have said, I will go fight and possibly die for my country. I'm just going to get smoke. You could do those things. You are going to fight. You could die, but we're also going to hook you on cigarettes. And then when you come home and you're still smoking cigarettes, we're going to offer you no support to try to quit smoking cigarettes with the best available methods possible.
Yeah.
That kills me. I mean, that kills me to my
Well,
core. That is disgusting.
well, one of the most hair pulling out experiences that I felt recently as I was listening to a podcast with a medical outlet, you know, media outlet, and they were
Mhm.
doing a podcast around vaping, and they were asking individuals about how to quit vaping. And they
Mm.
brought on an elderly lady that smoked for many decades,
Mhm.
and she was ecstatic that she was able to quit smoking with a vape. But then she had just found out that she was going to be a grandmother, and she wanted to now quit vaping. So
Mm.
her story was that she went out to go find out how to quit vaping, and there was no real material out there to assist her in this mission that she had. Great.
Mm.
She had a mission. Oh,
Yeah.
let's go. So she then approached a smoke ending service, and the advice that they provided to her was that in order for you to quit vaping, you need to pick up smoking again, because then we can help you quit smoking.
Whoa. 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 That I am speechless. That is crazy.
That that
That is
and
crazy.
it's literally on a podcast, and from a medical media outlet in South Africa, and they put this on there to say this lady has gone to
Wow.
a smoke ending or smoke cessation clinic, and the advice that they provided her is in order for you to do it, we need to switch you back to smoking, and then we can help you get off the cigarettes.
Wow. Wow.
That's the level of VDS that's been.
Yeah, I'm shocked by this. I'm shocked by that story. I see things in the US. I see so many mental gymnastics going on, especially with politicians who, they don't want to give up their stance that vaping is bad.
Hmm.
So they tiptoe around like, well, it's better for smokers, but only cigarette smokers should be switching to vaping. And so I pose these questions like, okay, you're right that cigarette smokers should be transitioning to vaping, but how long do we force someone to smoke cigarettes before they're allowed to vape?
Yeah.
Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 2 weeks? How long would you like us to smoke first
Yes.
before we can pick up a vape?
Yeah.
Your logic makes no sense. Wouldn't it be better for someone who wants to smoke cigarettes to vape instead?
Well, I liken it to, I'm a big fella. I like my food, and I liken to go into, for example, to a doctor, and the doctor says, well, Kurt, you're gonna have to lose weight, and we suggest a diet, and we suggest exercise. However, before we get you onto the treadmill, we suggest that you go do a triathlon. And if the triathlon doesn't work for you, then maybe we'll recommend mountain climbing. Uh, and if that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do it for you, then maybe what we can suggest is a treadmill or some swimming. Instead of actually saying, well, do whatever it takes in order for you to reach that goal. These are all the options available to you. They just whatever works for you, do it. And these are the options, and these are the risks. As you said from the very beginning of this interview, is that getting the accurate, appropriate information for people to make that choice, and then support them in
Yes.
that.
Yes. 8,000 times,
Yeah.
8 trillion times. Yes. I'm a firm believer that all the government should be doing isn't playing crony capitalism, isn't handing the industry over to big tobacco, isn't demonizing vaping while propping up cigarette sales. All the government should be doing is saying, these are cigarettes. Here's what they do to you. This is vaping. Here's what it does to you. Here's pouches. Here's what it does to you. you can decide what to use.
Yeah. Yeah. And then have
That's all.
regulations around, the safety requirements. So,
Absolutely.
you can't, in order for you to have that battery in that device, that needs to meet a certain standard. In
Yep,
order
they
for
should
you
be
to have,
regulated for safety,
exactly, if that liquid is in
and that's
there,
it.
it cannot have certain chemicals in it. Those
Yeah,
chemicals are known to, that's all that needs to happen. But
that's
as
all that needs
for
to happen.
the rest of the time, is saying, we support you. These are the options available to you. These are the risks associated with them. The choice is yours, but don't exaggerate the risks. I mean, just 2 days ago, I heard a pulmonologist in South Africa talk about popcorn lung and how
Ugh,
the biggest
there's a
cause
video.
of popcorn
Yeah.
lung is e-cigarettes. And again, I can never grow this hair because it just literally, you know, pull your hair out moments continuously because
Yeah.
of the amount of misinformation from a trusted source.
Yeah, from what's supposed to be a trusted source.
Yes,
I'm not this is something that I eternally struggle with is I'm not a throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of guy. If Johns Hopkins Medicine or the World Health Organization is wrong about vaping, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong about everything else. It gives me doubt, it makes me skeptical of everything else, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong about everything else. This is a problem I have with the FDA too, is there's a lot that the FDA does that's objectively good, but they're dead wrong about vaping. The Center for Tobacco Products is wrong. They're just wrong about it, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong about everything. So it's why I can't get into the like, well, burn it all down, just to defund the FDA, no more FDA. And I'm thinking, no, that's a terrible idea, but there does need to be severe reforms that happen within certain departments at the FDA.
absolutely.
You know, I
Absolutely.
can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just can't. I can't do it yet. I'm getting close to just burn it all down, but I can't get there yet.
Well, in South Africa, we kind of got there already. So, I mean, it's not burnt down, it just doesn't work. Um,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
believe it's almost an hour into this, and we
Sure.
could go on for forever.
Probably
Finally,
could.
what would you like to say to all the South African vapors that are hopefully going to watch this? All of them. Um, what would you
Every
like to
South
say
African.
to them?
Uh, it just don't, if you believe in these products and you want to advocate for them, don't give up. Just don't, because harm reduction works. It just does. It works across all things. It works across tobacco harm reduction. It works for drugs, for intravenous drugs. It keeps people alive, but you have to be okay with people still wanting to use those substances. Don't give up. Vaping works. It's always going to work. The cat's out of the bag, and you know, be safe and don't give up. And be proud of it. Proselytize this all over the place. Tell everybody you possibly can. Oh yeah, vaping. I quit smoking cigarettes. Yeah, vaping saved my life. Be proud of it. I see a lot of timid people who are ashamed that they vape. I'm thinking, don't be. You made an unbelievably good choice. That's a really good decision you made. You need to be proud of it. You need to tell people about it. And you know, pride. That's bring some pride back to vaping. If you quit smoking with vaping, you made an excellent decision. And you know, hopefully hopefully things hopefully things turn around. I can't speak exactly to South Africa and your rules and regulations. I know it's bad, just as Australia is bad, just as the US is bad, just that, there's even places in the EU and Ireland, even the UK is looking to crack down on things like flavors and things like that.
Yeah,
Harm reduction works, vaping works, and don't give up. Don't lose hope. Rebellions are built on hope. I think Jyn Erso said that in Star Wars, but rebellions are built on hope. And we're a
absolutely.
rebellion, and vaping is such a disruptive technology that's why you see all this pushback against it. You know, the status quo of tobacco, cigarettes, and tax revenue and pharmaceutical products. It's all this very gross, sort of incestuous relationship where big tobacco makes money. You know, big tobacco buys their filters for their cigarettes from big pharmaceuticals. So big pharmaceuticals makes money off of selling these ingredients to big tobacco. Big tobacco sells the ingredients to the consumers. The ingredients make the consumers sick. Big pharma's in there to swoop in and save people. It's a very rigid status quo system, and there's a lot of people in power that aren't ready to say goodbye to that, and we
Yeah.
need them to say goodbye to that because we're dying.
Yeah.
You know, people who smoke cigarettes are dying, and it can be all stopped. It can be all stopped. Maybe that was a little long-winded, but it can all be stopped.
It's absolutely perfect. And I really like to thank you once again for all the hard
My
work and the
pleasure.
commitment you've put into this. It's been an absolute blessing for many, many individuals out there, including myself.
Well,
So
thank you
thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Listen, it's my pleasure. It's a labor of love. And I love seeing, I like seeing people like yourself step up and go, well, I'm going to be a voice. I'm going to have a podcast. I'm going to put a message out there. I think we inspire each other within the THR space. There's many times where I feel defeated. I feel like, what's the point of any of this? And then you get on Twitter X and you see, oh, there's a new there's a new podcast, there's a new Kurt, and then Charles is tweeting, and then, okay, well, we still believe in this. Okay, well, let's encourage each other. Let's keep going.
Yep.
I think we all help each other out in many ways, said and unsaid.
It's a big mission. It's a
It
very
is.
big
It's a
mission.
big mission. It is.
Nick, you have a wonderful day. Thank you once again
I
for joining
will.
us on the Pack Breakers. I
My
consider you
pleasure.
as one of the grandmaster pack breakers out there.
I'm
Um,
just, I'm happy to be part of the team. I felt this when we had a big rally in DC, but I like feeling like I'm part of something that's bigger than myself.
yeah.
You know, I just feel like I'm part of a big team, and that's a good feeling. There's millions of us who are all fighting for this, and it feels good. Feels good. Feels noble, in my opinion, to fight for something like this.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And you have a wonderful day.
My pleasure. You too, Kurt. You too.
Cheers.
Cheers.